this is Christina Barney watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barn. Today, we're going to be talking about Harrison Butker's speech. And I know that happened last week, and there's been a lot of commentary about it. But, I was in the midst of Comic-Con, and people are still talking about it. And he gave a commencement speech at a Catholic school, and I listened to it. I did not read a think piece. I did not look at headlines. I did not look at little clips. I actually watched the entire thing, and I have thoughts, many thoughts about it that I know I haven't heard anyone, I guess, take the nuance approach that I guess I'm gonna bring to it. But I have, spoiler alert, people have lost their minds about it, and it's really crazy. But at the same time, he obviously woke up and chose violence that day. So even a little bit surprised about the controversy. However, Joe Biden gave a commencement speech at Morehouse, and that was really divisive, considering the reactions that were exploding over Butker's speech versus Joe Biden. And Joe Biden is the president of the United States, pushing racially divisive language and lying about all kinds of things in his speech. So I have actually listened to both, and I want to talk about both. And also the Pope on 60 Minutes said some stuff that is triggering to Christians, as it is, pretty antithetical to the gospel and everything. So we'll be talking about those things today. Hope you guys enjoy. Someone did request that I, put timestamps and stuff on my video. So I'm going to start doing that, because I know everybody doesn't want to watch all of the segments, and I don't clip stuff out as much as I probably should. So I'm going to be doing that. Now, obviously, I don't think you can do that automatically, like once the stuff is done recording in the live, but I'll get to it. So at least by the next day or something, there will be the timestamps on the videos. So I hear you, and I'm going to take that very good suggestion and try to make things a little easier for you guys. But before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website, because it does cost to stream and run my website, all that stuff. So you guys can support, appreciate it. If you're watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars. Watching on YouTube, you guys can send super chats. You guys can also look at the different merch that's available at the store, like this cool "I am not the victim you're looking for" tee. I've also got this "Denounce white supremacy, defeat Joe Biden" shirt with a list of some of his racism on the back. I have it in short sleeve and also long sleeve. I have the long sleeve shirt, which is very comfortable, and it's not too hot, but it's hot right now. I don't know where you guys are all watching from, but I'm in Michigan, and usually we have all of our seasons, so the summer has begun. I guess we're done with the snow and it's warm. Someone today was like, "Oh, at least you get to enjoy this nice weather." I'm like, it's a little too warm. It's a little too warm for me. But yeah, it's hot. So anyway, I do have t-shirts and things in short sleeve. You guys can also check out mugs and other things on the site as well. Also want to mention that Motor City Comic-Con was this weekend. That's why I didn't stream on Thursday and Friday. I was going to take the day off today, but as I told you guys, if the news was juicy, I was probably going to pop in. And so I had a lot of thoughts to share, and I'm like, I might as well go live and talk about it before the story gets like too behind, because there's even more news that I'd like to cover that already happened that I can't get to today. So here I am. Here I am, not resting, but it was a good weekend for those of you who are curious. Motor City Comic Con, it took place at the Suburban Show Place in Novi. And I had a booth there in the Artist Alley selling my books. And my sister was next to me. She was selling some of her artwork there. Some of you are familiar with her work because sometimes I post it online. But if you've seen this book cover, she's the one who made that hand of God reaching out to the little baby hand there. So she does, all kinds of portraits and little mini portraits and text portraits and stuff like that. So she had a really good weekend, and I had a good weekend too. I was very frustrated though, because usually there's an X amount of time if I order books, Amazon will get them to me, and they weren't going to be able to get it to me, and they didn't even give me any advanced shipping options. And so I was just bewildered. And actually, right before I went live, I got a doorbell ring. And so I, you know, paused and went to go get my package. So they just delivered my additional books today, the day after convention. But my most popular book that I sell, that people say, "What's your favorite?" I tell them my book, The Color of God's Eyes. It's my historical fiction fantasy. My quick elevator pitch is, it's American Civil War meets X-Men. So I only had like a limited amount of books of those and the sequel and stuff. So I sold out of that on the first day, and I have plenty of other books to pitch and sell and stuff, and I did. But I was, a little sad that my heavy hitter was kind of gone already, and I'm like, well, if I had more of them, I would sell more. But no, I still had a good weekend, and it's always nice to have signs that say sold out, sold out. But one thing that was really cool for me, if you guys don't mind me sharing, there was a young woman who came to my table, and I say young woman, but she might have been around my age. I don't know. um, or she could have been younger. I don't know. But she came to my table and she's like, "I love The Color of God's Eyes. I'm such a fan of your work. I love it so much." She's like, "Is there another book in the series?" And so at that point in time, I had sold out of The Color of God's Eyes, and I had one song on The Devil's Lips. And I was really trying hard to sell them both at the same time, because I didn't want to like have an uneven number or something. It'll be left with just the song on The Devil's Lips, and nobody picks it up because they don't know what the first book is. And so she came and I was like, "I have one of these books left." And so she picked it up, and she's like, "I can't wait to read it." And she's like, I really love that. I'm a big fan, I'm a big fan, I'm a big fan. So that really made my day. It really made my day. It's nice to hear people say that they follow my work and they like my work, and that they enjoyed it. And I write because the stories, I'm easily inspired. I love to write, and it just kind of really consumes me. So I would do it, I guess, regardless of what anyone else felt about it. But it's nice that there's people who do like and appreciate the work. And I've been going to Motor City Comic Con show consistently. Maybe the past 5 shows that they've done, I've been there. But I used to go before that. But like when my Super Kid book first came out, I was going to Motor City Con, but I didn't have all the books that I have now. So anyway, there's been people who've gotten a couple of my books, several of my books. So a couple of people came by. I was like, "I love them. I follow you online, and I love your stuff, etc., etc." So it's nice. So just keep plugging away at your dream. If there's something that you are passionate about, keep going for it. So and if you keep working on your craft, I'm a better writer today than I was when I first started. And if you don't improve, then there's something wrong. Everyone should be getting better over time and stuff. And so just keep working on your craft and be dedicated, and hopefully what you sow into the world, you eventually reap back. So yeah, I had a good weekend, and I thank you guys for your patience, and we can get to the news. So on Thursday, I think it was, I decided to listen to the commencement speech while we were on the way to the convention. And I was baffled. It was either Thursday or Friday, but I was on the way to convention, and I started listening to the speech. And I was baffled by the reaction that everyone was giving with Harrison Butkers. And I think mostly the issues that people are imagining the worst interpretation of the things that he said, and are just arguing with that in so many unsaid things that they think that it's supposed to mean. So huge overreactions. Change.org had clipped some stuff together. I'm going to show you this clip that they pieced together about his speech. And there are people actually trying to get him fired from his job. Now, he is a Catholic man who was speaking at a Catholic university. And I don't think I'm not Roman Catholic. I'm not Catholic. I don't agree with everything that he says, or and some things to me don't make sense from the outside perspective. But people are mad about so many kind of political things and roles that men and women play that he touched on, but he really had hands for everybody in his speech. He really had hands for everybody. It wasn't just like he came for the women that day. And it's not what happened. Like, he even talked about the church and how, the priests are putting out stuff and people aren't paying attention to it. Like, they're kind of losing their spark, I guess. And people are losing their hunger to learn. It was just like a whole sort of condemnation on a lot of like a wake up call for a bunch of people. To me, his speech came off before I get to the controversial things people are really mad about. His speech, I know how many of you go to church or have been in a revival or something. But sometimes you might be in a church and there's a guest pastor, a guest evangelist or something, and they will come in and they are throwing bomb after bomb after bomb. And you're like, and there's people like, amen, pastor, shake the bush. And they're saying all these like affirmations toward the person who's coming in and kind of telling people off with the message in the sermon. And maybe they know kind of drama that's going on. Maybe they know the stuff going on with different people in the church. Maybe they don't. It just happens to hit. Maybe they're just being kind of led by the Spirit and touching on all that stuff. But it was kind of like I'm going to throw a bomb in here and then I'm going to go back to wherever I came from. That's kind of what, his speech was like. It was like, I'm coming here to kick butt and take names. I'm here with a rebuke. And that's what it felt like to me. That's what it felt like to me. So people are upset about a lot of this political kind of stuff that he said. Again, when he had hands for everybody, so he wasn't really picking on the women or something like that. He really wasn't. But I don't know. At the same time, I do feel that people are overreacting about his speech. But I don't know how appropriate it was for a commencement speech, because if I was, I would think that most of the things that he said should gel and be in line with a Catholic school, like the views on abortion and even, birth control and other stuff like that. Those are, maybe people find them to be controversial issues, but they're pretty aligned with the faith. People can be mad about it or whatever, but it is what it is. It shouldn't be that particularly controversial. But I would expect that if it was a commencement speech, you go there, you sit there, people tell like a lovely story that's fluffy about overcoming obstacles and being optimistic about the future and how you're strong enough to achieve your goals and your dreams, etc. And some just like something really inspirational, and the political stuff that he touched on, most of it, I agree with. And if I was in the audience, I wouldn't have been offended by it, I guess. I kind of been like, oh, some people ain't gonna like that today. Oh, some people ain't gonna like that today. Oh, some people ain't gonna like that today. But if the shoe was on the other foot and I was sitting in a graduation and there was political things being said and I disagreed with those things, I would be annoyed. Like, Biden, his commencement speech at Morehouse got quite political, and I wouldn't appreciated that. I'd have been like, can you just shut up and tell like a good story and encouragement, get off the stage? I don't even want you here anyway. But they selected you, and this is my moment, it's not yours, and you want to make it some kind of big political speech. I don't appreciate it. It shouldn't be about you, it's about us. and you're here causing division. Like, that's not what today is supposed to be. So I don't think his speech was entirely appropriate. And I haven't really heard a lot of people, I guess, on the right say that, but I don't care. It was my opinion. um if he was like giving a speech for Turning Point USA, or YAF, Young Americans for Freedom, yes, I think that's what it stands for. It would have been fine. He could do a little Q&A at the end of it, like Ben Shapiro and Michael Knowles and so on, and it would have been totally cool, and people would have still been mad at him, especially if there was opposition that came. But but that seemed more like an appropriate setting than all the things that he said at the graduation, if that makes sense. But it was about 20 minutes long. And so let me get back to what change.org put out, because again, there's people who are so mad they wanted him fired. Change.org petition is calling on the Chiefs to dismiss kicker Harrison Butkers for making several dehumanizing remarks during his commencement speech at Benedictine College on May 11th. Here's what the 3-time Super Bowl champion said about women, Pride Month, COVID, abortion, and more. Notice, what he said. He also challenged men. He said stuff about the church. He even said something about like the Catholic mass. He's like, mass shouldn't even be, it should be in Latin. And I'm like, what? Why Latin? Like, why is that such a big deal? Why not, if you're really going back to the root of where all this started, why not like Hebrew or Aramaic or something, or Greek, or why why Latin is so important? It just, again, I'm not Catholic, but so some of these things just don't kind of gel with me. But he had very specific things that he addressed, and he addressed a lot of things. So people are sticking with his political stuff, but he had hands for everybody, including challenging men to be better role models in society.
I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. By making it to this moment through all the adversity.
And just so you know, he went on about, there was a clip there because they're going through, to be fair, it's like 12, this is like 2 minutes 12 seconds. That's like standard like X video platform time, and they're trying to get through a couple different things. But in the midst of him talking about his wife, he literally starts to struggle to speak because he is in tears or near tears, because his wife, who he met when he was young, she converted to the faith and she became a homemaker, and he can't do anything without his wife, in his life and so on. So it was a beautiful call out for his wife. But they chop that there. So I just want people to know, as people talk about this issue, that he doesn't hate women. He very much loves them and appreciates them. And that snippet that they showed, that they said is so dehumanizing and controversial, is just true for a lot of women. That even if they do have careers, and he's not saying that you can't have one, right? And I think that'll be kind of a really bad message at a college graduation. Okay. If that was his end goal, but that's not what he said. And he said, you're probably all very excited to begin your careers, but you're probably very excited to begin your families and raise children. And that is true for many, 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 many men and women. that they spend their childhood dreaming of meeting a good man and having a family, and they dream about their dream wedding and so on. You know, they play house and have the little baby and all that stuff. And maybe, you know, he talks about they listen to The Biggest Lie from Society, this idea of like, oh, be a girl boss and put everything aside and wait so late to have families and etc. Like, you should go after life as it happens, as the opportunities happen. Not every woman, like there's some people like really ragging on women who are older and get married or aren't married yet but still maybe want that. You don't always meet the right guy in your youth. We had a women's conference recently at my church, and the main speaker was a former member, and she ended up leaving years ago after she had gotten married. But you know, she was single for a long time. She dated and stuff, but she didn't get married until she was about 40. And so she told the church, she's like, he was worth all those years that she had to wait. And she talked about how good he treated her and that he was as close to heaven as she could get. And it was beautiful to hear that, because not you don't always meet the right one when you're young. I'm an unmarried woman. I'd like to get married one day, but you just don't always meet the right person. And if the right person does come along, you know, go ahead and, you know, make that family, make those kids, and discover life together, live life together. I think that it's really great to grow up and build a life with someone rather than having to go through the struggle of really trying to make your worlds mesh when you're so defined alone. You know, I think things can get a little challenging, but at the same time, people can, when they're older, they may just kind of know what they want. And if they find someone who respects that and gels with that, you can have a really easy time too. So it just really depends on the people. But like you know, but not everybody who's not married young is some kind of like Marxist who is just put her career first, etc. You know, life happens differently for all of us. But anyway, even women who aren't married still want to be and dream of having kids, and when they get older, they're concerned about their biological clock. People will freeze their eggs and all kinds of different stuff. So this idea that it's so awful that he said his wife's like life and stuff didn't really fully begin or reach the height of whatever until she started having kids and got married, that that many people find building their family to be the most meaningful thing that they do, you know. That is not strange, and that goes for men and women. That goes for men and women. It's really not controversial. It shouldn't have been controversial at all. And he's sitting up there crying about his wife and how much she means to him and their family. And again, you can still have a career and take care of your family. If you want to go biblical, you can go read Proverbs 31 and read about, you know, a virtuous woman. And we've gone through that chapter before on the show, but it talks about how she's respected in the community, respected by her husband, respected by her children, but she's also an entrepreneur. She handles the affairs of the house. You know, she considers a field, she goes and she buys it. She's you know, a boss lady herself, but her business is also taking care of her family. And more women used to be kind of more dimensional with, you know, those careers while being a homemaker. But, you know, some industrialized stuff took away some of those opportunities. Like, for example, if you're a seamstress or something like that. And, you know, people, you get industrialized sort of clothes making and stuff. And that starts taking away jobs and, that a lot of women would do, for example. But we live in a technological age where there's so many opportunities that pop up all the time. People, you know, making stuff on the internet and selling it on Etsy and or whatever site. So, or you know, you could be a writer and so on. There's just all kinds of different ways that you can have a career and even still be at home to a degree. But some people do feel that they have to go out and provide for their family with two incomes. And he didn't say you can't do that. He didn't say you can't. So anyway, let's move on to this next part that change.org said was controversial. This is the COVID section.
Thrown your way from COVID, I hope you learned the important lessons that suffering in this life is only temporary. As a group, you witnessed firsthand how bad leaders who don't stay in their lane can have a negative impact on society. While COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it is not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder. Our own nation is led by a man.
Okay, so he was originally asked to give the speech because, these kids had been through a lot with COVID and other stuff like that. They, a lot of their life was disrupted. And if you're mad because he mentioned that people's lives were disrupted, that there was poor leadership, you just need to grow up. You just need to grow up, because there were a lot of bad calls that were made. You're going to tell me that mixing COVID patients with nursing home patients was a good idea? It must have been a really bad deal, because only like 5 Democrats governors decided that was a thing that they should do. So what about Biden's OSHA mandates that didn't make sense? It made sense if you wanted to pressure and break people's will to get them vaccinated. But he used OSHA mandates for businesses that had over 100 employees. So they said that they either had to continuously test their employees who were unvaccinated, which the company did not have to provide those tests. So that'd be a bill that'd be passed on to the employees. Which, by the way, even if you're vaccinated, you can still catch COVID and spread it. So it didn't make sense that they only wanted to test the unvaccinated, unless, of course, it was just about trying to break the will of the people so they would get vaccinated. It didn't make sense from we're trying to keep the population safe at standpoint. It only made sense for we're going to coerce you into doing this thing. So they could either get the perpetual testing or they could go ahead and get the jab. And it was a really big deal for many people. It was very frustrating for me at the time, because I had to deal with that with my family and particularly my sister, and not knowing if her job was going to be secure because of this OSHA stuff. Thankfully, you had different groups that quickly sued the Biden administration over that. But it didn't make any sense. And then, you guys know some of the policies that were implemented didn't make any sense. You can go out on the water if you're in a boat that has like a paddle or something, but not a motor. Oh, you can't travel between your own houses. Oh, I was shopping in the grocery store, I think it was about last week or so, and I just was looking down the aisles, and I'm like, they really believed that they were keeping us safe by painting arrows down the aisles to tell us which way we're supposed to go, and using like caution tape to section off different aisles where like there's plants and different stuff, where there's items where they said that were not essential. Like, you can come in this department store, but don't you dare go buy seeds and paint thinner. Which my sister, my youngest sister, who's the artist, was really annoyed, because she's like, okay, well, this stuff is essential to my business, so how can you say that this isn't an essential product for me? So it was just one dumb thing after another. So saying that there's bad leadership who didn't know how to stay in their lane. If you don't agree with that, there's something mentally wrong with you. There's something mentally wrong with you, or you are a toddler who was born recently, or you have full blown Alzheimer's, dementia, something. If you can't remember how ridiculous things were during COVID. And of course, he mentioned a lot of his theme was like, people need to stay in their lane, like know their role and there's an order to things, and you don't step out of your role. Now, I don't know. There are particular roles that I think that people have in general that men and women feel that there's not necessarily crossover and stuff for, but I don't know if I like that overall as a speech for graduation, because there's so many things that people are going to have to do to step on people's toes and discover about themselves, and you know, kind of break the mold on a lot of different things. um I respect uh my calling and where God wants me to be. But like if a man was telling, just, and I don't mean like, oh man, I mean like mankind was telling me like, hey Christina, there's a lane that you need to stay in, I'd be like, who are you? That's between me and God. That's between me and God. Like I have to go to the altar and discover like who I'm supposed to be. And there's so many things going from the time where I did graduate, um or just a couple of years ago, where I had no idea who I was supposed to be. So this whole kind of saying, you're like, I don't love the thing. I didn't really, there was, he was based in his speech, and I can appreciate a lot of different things that he said, being like, oh, burn, burn, burn. But overall, I don't think it was like a speech. It wasn't a speech I would have gave, to be frank. It wasn't a speech I would have gave. But thinking about like when I was a kid, I couldn't imagine myself being a writer or anything like that. Like I thought the only books I would be able to write, cause someone had like prophesied something over me about they saw me writing books and other stuff like that, and I was just like, my dad wrote a bunch of books, and they were all like nonfiction faith books, and I don't know, it seemed kind of boring to me a little bit. And I just couldn't imagine like knowing all that stuff, and I was young at the time. But it's so silly considering at this point in time I've written over 30 books, and two are nonfiction. My, of course, Guys Blatantly Against Abortion book, I had to do a lot of research for. That was a really big labor of love. But most of my books are fiction. I just didn't properly conceive of what that could be. But it just, who I was evolved over time. So um I don't love the message of stay in your lane. People, there's certain lanes that people need to stay in, of course, but I just don't like it. I don't love it for a graduation speech. So anyway, let's go into the abortion section here, where he starts talking about Joe.
Man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. The world around us says that we should keep our beliefs to ourselves whenever they go against the tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We fear speaking truth because now, unfortunately, truth is in the minority. Congress just passed a bill where stating something as basic as the biblical teaching of who killed Jesus could land you in jail. I'm certain.
So that there's two sections right there. So the abortion one, yeah, Joe Biden supports the murder of babies. That's what abortion is. Like we can be frank about it. Like, and there's a lot of people okay with that, or maybe they maybe think it's icky, but it's a, excuse me, it's an evil that they think is appropriate to allow into the world because they don't like what it could lead to, or they just kind of want to, I don't know, don't want to be bothered, so they just kind of leave the option to other people because I don't know, they just kind of want to zone out. Like, oh, it doesn't involve me, which is interesting because then they'll be mad if you think it involves you. I'm like, why don't you keep not caring and go over there? As we'll argue about this. If you don't care, go away. Go away. Don't bother me. I'm trying to save the babies. If you don't care, then just keep not caring and don't bother me. As I'm trying to save the babies. But Joe Biden has a very radical position. He used to say that abortion, even if he supported it, he thought it was a tragedy. and now, they'll just keep saying Roe needs to be codified. And when they ask, like, how late does he want abortions, and he's like, well, we need to restore Roe v. Wade allows abortion throughout the term, like full term. There's a lot of people don't understand that, and I've had to explain this many times, but Roe v. Wade allows the states to put parameters after a certain point of time. The first 12 months are pretty much, you can not 12 months, I'm sorry, 12 weeks. You pretty much can't really have restrictions like that. But the next like trimester, you can put restrictions on the abortion stuff in the interest of the mother's health or something. So if you're gonna put restrictions on the clinics to make sure that, I don't know, they're clean and whatever, blah blah blah, you can do stuff like that. But as far as like the moral consideration for the child, that doesn't come until later. And there were different cases that altered Roe v. Wade in a bit, but it was just set up by the trimesters. But you can still, a state can still say, no, we would like to keep abortion up until, the third trimester beyond, and Roe v. Wade allows that. So when Joe Biden and his press secretary try to go that route of, oh, we just, they won't answer how extreme they are, but they just want to go to Roe v. Wade. Okay, if they say they want to restore Roe v. Wade, they're saying that they want abortion to be available up to 40 weeks if that's what the state decides. but I guess that's also in a way what people are saying when they claim that they think that abortion should be left up to the states, because at the same time the states are saying, they're saying that if a state wants to allow abortions up to 40 weeks, and hey, that's what the state deems. And you could say, well, it's different because it's a federalist thing. I don't I don't think your human rights should just shift state to state. Just my opinion. I don't think that was a great thing back in the day with the black people and everything, but having to, this state here, they can they have slavery and all that stuff. It just kind of seems like there should be like a standard across the board, but this is my crazy way of thinking, I guess. But yeah, but Roe v. Wade prevents states from saving lives, though, up to a certain point. It will allow you to kill them all the way if that's what the state wants, but it will prevent you. What took down Roe v. Wade was a 15-week ban, not a 6-week heartbeat bill. It was a 15-week thing. So Biden is very radical. He's shifted his perspective on it a lot, I guess, at least publicly throughout the years. And many of these Democrats have moved from the safe, legal, and rare to, you should allow it up until basically the moment of birth, which is unfortunate. So he didn't say anything wrong there. When he got into the equity, diversity, inclusion thing, he did mention the banning of saying who killed Jesus. And that's been recent in the news. Like, oh, Congress just passed a bill. And if you, for anti-Semitism, and if you say that the Jews killed Jesus, which is in the Bible, then it's illegal now. That's not what happened. They just defined Title 6 and included a particular definition for anti-Semitism, but it doesn't make it illegal to talk about the Bible. So he was just flat out wrong on that particular section, the particular part. But and I don't know. A lot of people were saying that, and there's a lot of people spreading that. But I would think by now, you're writing a big speech, that you should have known the truth on that. So I've already talked about that bill. I said I didn't like it, but it's not what he presented in his speech. Now let's look at this pride part.
The reporters at the AP could not have imagined that their attempt to rebuke and embarrass places and people like those here at Benedictine wouldn't be met with anger, but instead met with excitement and pride. Not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it, but the true God-centered pride that is cooperating with the Holy Ghost to glorify him.
So you heard the audience, kind of a bit. So that was um I guess maybe that was the most controversial thing that he said according to the reactions. However, that was definitely not controversial in a Catholic school. uh the Bible's pretty clear about its stance on marriage and the kind of relations that people are supposed to have. So you can not like it. You can just agree with it. A lot of people aren't Catholic, a lot of people aren't Christian, and a lot of people who are Christian would ignore their part anyway. I get it, but it says what it says. It is what it is. Um, so it shouldn't have really been that particularly controversial. But even if you thought that part was controversial, the whole Pride Month situation is kind of trash, guys. The sort of kinky parades that people have, the perversion that people push is really gross. And I don't want to see dudes naked riding bikes. Like I recommend, if you don't want to see that stuff, you're probably going to have to mute libs of TikTok next month. There's just so much crazy stuff. And why should you have pride in who you want to sleep around with and make it a big scene and make everybody have to celebrate it and all that different kind of stuff? Who you are isn't who you sleep with, bro. But you know, the Pride Month stuff was pretty obscene. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and more degenerate. So I don't think there was anything really controversial about what he said there. As far as if you were looking at from a Catholic perspective, Catholic school, etc. I absolutely understand the media losing their minds over the speech. Abso-freaking-lutely. I get it. Um, and that kind of stuff would make them mad. And so people have been commenting about it nonstop, saying he's a terrible person, etc. They want him to be fired from his job, which basically, and people are, the crazy thing is they're comparing Harrison to Kaepernick, and they're like, oh, why are people letting him stay on and he could play and they allow him, but they're mad at Kaepernick. And Kaepernick was protesting on the NFL's time, on their field, kneeling during the national anthem at a time where it should be bringing people together. So I have lots of reasons why I don't like Colin Kaepernick that I don't have all the time to run through today. But it's not the same. He was invited to give a speech at a Catholic school. And if people just don't like Christians, and if people just don't like Christian beliefs, and perhaps you're just a bigot, it's fine to say that, or some of it is just straight up bigotry. And some of it, you can just be like, well, I don't agree, or whatever. Now, again, I don't necessarily think that all the stuff that was said should have, I don't think this should have been his speech. I don't think it was a good graduation speech. I didn't really feel that it was, you could say maybe needed to be said. Some of the stuff needed to be said, or someone needs to have the courage to say this stuff. Sure. But again, if the shoe was on the other foot, and I would want the day to be about me. And not just me, but also the people around me who worked very hard for that day. And you want to hear something that's really going to inspire you to push really hard and achieve your dreams and so on, etc. And I just don't feel that it was a great speech personally. So he woke up and chose violence. He did. When he wrote his speech, from all sides. And he criticized not just political stuff, but he also talked about the church and all those sorts of things as well. So again, he was like the out of state evangelist who comes in once a year to rebuke and and put things in order. That was the vibe that I got. So the things that he said, they need to be said, but they can be said to the masses at church, or they can do like a Cliff and Stewart thing if you follow those Christians who are at the different campuses and debates and all that kinds of different stuff at a graduation. I just don't feel like it was a great venue to lay all that down, I guess. And people could disagree, but it just wouldn't have been my speech. And I know if I disagree with the politics, I really wouldn't have appreciated it, because I didn't appreciate Biden doing this at Morehouse. I would have been ticked off if I was in the audience and it got political and stuff. I'm like, I don't even want you here, bro. Now you're telling all these lies and doing the race baiting stuff. So Joe Biden, of course, gave a speech at Morehouse College, and he said the first maybe 10 minutes or so were fine. He talked about the college, he talked about civil rights and how the college came to be. And then he started talking about his family a bit. He mentioned his son passing away, of course, which he does at a strange amount. And I don't believe all the details that he gives about his son's death are correct. And there's kind of lots of questions on verging on conspiracies from how he tells the story. But he started going into racial stuff with the US. And it's just not cool when you have a group of adults who have achieved something great, and then you go into this whole rant about basically how like, what is democracy if you still experience racism, or if I'll just play some of it so you know what I'm talking about.
Today, you missed your high school graduation. You started college just as George Floyd was murdered, and there was a reckoning on race. It's natural to wonder if democracy you hear about actually works for you. What is democracy? If black men are being killed in the street, what is democracy? The trail of broken promises still leave black communities behind. What is democracy? You have to be 10 times better than anyone else to get a fair shot. Most of all, what does it mean, as we've heard before, to be a black man who loves his country, even if it doesn't love him back in equal measure?
So the sorts of things that Biden are saying to this, this Barack Obama-esque racism is America's DNA, etc., sort of mentality, it's not good for black people to instill them with such hysteria. Now, people do experience racism. All people can experience racism. I'm sure white people have experienced a lot in the past couple of years. We see a lot of anti-Semitism going on right now. We know that Hispanics can experience racism. Biden has been racist toward people, so particularly black people. The "you ain't black" comment, very racist. When he was talking to a group of Hispanic voters, like on an online thing, he said, well, unlike the African American community, the Hispanic community is very diverse about, with their thoughts and so on. So that was pretty messed up that he said that. And Kathy Hochul, governor of New York, recently making her comments about, like, there's kids in the Bronx, black kids and people of color in the Bronx who don't even know what a computer is, which my nephew, I don't think I told you guys this story. I did talk about this story, and I did mention my nephew on how he can like scroll through and look at different videos and stuff and go to his favorite songs. But after church one day, he took my sister's phone, and not his mom, but one of my other sisters, went to the McDonald's app, found the French fries, held up the phone and said, "Let's fry." He's 2 years old. Now, I don't know entirely if he knows. He probably knows what a computer is more than what he knows the word itself. But to think that there's so many people who don't know what a computer is crazy. is crazy. Black people are not that far behind on the 8 ball. So when you hear comments like that, it's like you question what the heck happened here. What the heck happened here that you have such a infantilized version of people of color? And that's what Joe Biden is creating with these sorts of speeches and this kind of environment. When you say, "Oh, it's what kind of democracy allows black people to be killed in the street?" There's there's lots of people being killed in the street, and if the implication is that police are doing it, like BLM tried to preach about, there was a Reuters data scientist who debunked that, and he ended up getting shellacked from his job because they didn't like the facts and the evidence. There was a Harvard professor who the Reuters analyst mentioned. I can't think of his name, but he did we talked about him not too long ago because he did an interview with Barry Weiss in the Free Press, and they talked about how his ordeal at Harvard when people were upset about his findings about police interactions, and they didn't find, there was one part where they found I think less aggressive things. They found there was a higher altercation rate with police. But as far as like aggressive stuff, they found that police were more prone to not attack black people. And people told him, like, if you put this out, then basically you're going to be done. And he's like, wait a second. Like, do you agree with the first part? They're like, yeah, but how come you don't agree with the second part? This is what the data has shown. And if he even like did the experiment and stuff twice, because when he got the results the first time, he's like, we must have did something wrong. So he like got an entirely new team to go through the data and stuff, and they once again came to the same conclusion. So this idea that America is so tough for people of color, particularly black people, it's just not the case. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying that people don't face adversity or people don't face racism. They can and they do. And Joe Biden is one of those people who has pushed it. He's can talk like he's an ally, but he's definitely been a perpetrator. However, it's just not, like, he mentioned George Floyd. I mean, and that whole racial reckoning that led to all of these riots and the crazy stuff that happened in Kenosha and other places. That was a terrible time. It was an awful time. And people were so obsessed with things that weren't true because they needed that narrative. They believed it so tightly. But like, I remember seeing videos. There was one video of a little child, a little girl, black girl. She saw a police car and she just ran and hid. And people were like, oh, this is a shame. This is a shame that the police make her feel this way. I'm like, well, who taught her to feel this way? What if someone was chasing her and she needed the help of a police officer and she's too afraid to go to them for help because she's been instilled with this terror? And if he means in general, black people are dying in the street, yeah, that's true. And unfortunately, a lot of those perpetrators are also black people. Unfortunately. But I mean, you're most likely to be killed in your own kind of neighborhood by your own kind of people, I guess. But in most cases, but there's some, things we need to get real about, bruh. And this idea that you got to work 10 times as hard. There was a controversy on about the Disney Plus show Percy Jackson, books and stuff. I'd never read Percy Jackson. I haven't seen the TV show and I didn't watch the movies. But there's a character named Annabeth who is the daughter of Athena, and she's supposed to have like blonde hair, and I don't remember her eye color, but they got a black girl to play her. And there's one really viral video on TikTok, and I talked about it with you guys at one point. And I did post a video about it on YouTube, but this one girl claimed that Annabeth had the stereotype of being a dumb blonde, and that trope, which people who were fans of the book said that wasn't even the case. But she said that that trope is outdated, which that's news to me. I didn't think we retired the dumb blonde bit, but she said that's stereotypical and that's outdated. So now they're using like casting a black person as Annabeth makes more sense because black people have been, you know, stereotyped in that kind of way, you know, she said every day like 10 times the amount or something like that. And I'm like, no, that's not true. There is no stereotype of black women being stupid. That doesn't exist. And so I did a video and it went very viral, the response to that video. And many conservatives were just like, here comes another liberal saying racist stuff, not knowing that they're racist. And there were some people trying to stand up for the girl, which the creator who originally posted her video apologized and said that she shouldn't have said what she said. But there are people who still try to defend her, and there were some young black people who were defending her, and then I go and I check their bios and they're all liberals. And then they would insist that they were, you know, mistreated or whatever, and they were treated like they were dumb. And just based on the engagement that I had with them, I'm like, it's probably not because you're black. It's probably not because you're black. It's probably because of your behavior, how you conduct yourselves. And one girl, I started to get into a conversation about the wage gap. And I said that it wasn't true. And I tried to break it down and explain to her how you get those numbers and etc. But it doesn't really mean much. But then she said that she went to Chat GPT or something to ask them about the wage gap. And I'm like, why don't you look at some real research? Why don't you look at like labor statistics and something like that? I'm like, why are you going to Chat GPT? And she didn't respond after that. But I'm like, some of y'all are so quick to blame race. And I'm like, maybe the problem is you. Maybe the problem is you. So some people have it hard, and maybe they have to try to work 10 times as hard or whatever, but it may not necessarily be because of race, but there's definitely some people out in this world who have better opportunities because they are a person of color. Let's just be for real. This, you know, DEI and the quest for diversity. Some people are diversity hires, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they are not going to be good at their job or that they can't do the job that they're hired for, but people will consider them over other people because of their race. And you're not really supposed to do that. That's not legal, but people do it. People do it. So he's just not creating, but pushing one false narrative after another to a room full of college graduates about how much of a victim they are. And here's another thing that he said that was crazy.
In America, we're all created equal. Extremists close the doors of opportunity. Strike down affirmative action. Attack the values of diversity, equality, and inclusion. I never thought when I was graduating in 1968, as your honoree just was, we talked about, I never thought I'd be a president at a time when there's a national effort to ban books. Not to write history, but to erase history. They don't see you in the future of America, but they're wrong. To me, we make history, not erase it. We know Black history is American history. Many of you graduates don't know me, but check my record. You know what I'm saying. I mean from my gut. We know Black men are going to help us lead us to the future. Black men from this class in this university. But graduates, this is what we're up against. Extremist forces aligned against the meaning and message of Morehouse.
So, oh boy. Biden. So, I'm really annoyed by people who try to keep insisting like the banned books thing, trying to bring race into it, when the truth is that most of these books that Moms of Liberty and other people want to make sure kids don't have access to are books that deal with sexual content. Books like Genderqueer and This Book is Gay and other stuff like that that have graphic content in it. That's what people don't want. And maybe there are some popular books that say a lot about race, but maybe there are scenes that they find that are not entirely appropriate to be in the schools. And you can debate about that. Sometimes, you look at if the content overall has some kind of merit and can be maybe age appropriate, but is the message and what you have to convey worth showing something or whatever? You have to weigh that. And a lot of the stuff that they want to push is just straight up gross and not even true. A fantastical ideology to a lot of these youth. So you don't need to bring us into it. Like, oh, they're trying Black history is American. Of course, Black history is American history. That's actually the argument that people use for like not needing a Black History Month, because it should just be integrated so well into the history that you don't need a separate month. Which I understand that argument. I don't necessarily like agree or whatever. I don't care. I don't know. We always made Black History Month a big deal in school, and we would learn about a bunch of interesting things, and we'd have a program, and so I don't know. I guess kind of how you grew up is how it's kind of ingrained within you. But I would appreciate if learning some more kind of diverse stories, because you kind of always covered the same people over and over again. And there's just so many more stories out there that I didn't learn till I was older, and just doing research and whatnot. But yeah, the dirty books that these people are pushing are gross. And I can tell you that many Black people would not be cool with things like This Book is Gay and Genderqueer. And they don't want their kid to go to the library and pick up a book that has things that they don't gel with their values, that just kind of slips past. They don't want that. But Biden and his administration is so gung-ho about defending all this stuff. And the media is gung-ho about defending that stuff. And we went through an interview with Joy Reid and one of the Moms from Liberty leaders. That was quite an interesting interview. Indeed, how much they want to defend inappropriate books. But don't try to hide. We're just trying to protect Black history. Genderqueer has nothing to do with Harriet Tubman and very Christian Frederick Douglass and all those guys. Nothing to do with it. You know what? Some things about history that I like that we don't really go over that would be cool to learn. How the abolitionists really played a role in ending slavery and their beliefs, and how their morality and their Christian convictions led them to fight against that evil. Maybe some of those things would be a nice little thing to teach, but we'd rather teach that boys can become girls and how to do things I don't want to say. He also mentioned things like wait time, like that they won't let you have water when you vote.
Today in Georgia, they won't allow water to be available to you while you wait in line to vote in an election. What in the hell is that all about? I'm serious. Think about it.
You're lying. You can always bring your own water, and two, you can have water, but they don't want people to, like, at a certain point, You can't engage and pass out different stuff to voters. I guess in some places they were doing more than just like water. They're trying to give like out food and all kinds of things that could be seen as a bribe or whatever. You're a grown person. It's nice if people want to hand you water or whatever, but you can bring your own to the polls. You can do that yourself. But they just still want to make it seem like Georgia was like the worst place to go vote, and it's just really not the case. And they ended up saying so many crazy things. Stacey Abrams and Joe Biden blew the all-star game being held in that state. And then they moved to a different state where they had, I think, more restrictions than Georgia did on the voting. It was just really bizarre. And the last thing I'm going to show you guys is a snippet of him talking about the Supreme Court and the loan stuff. He's supposed to be the dude who brings back the norms, yet here he is bragging about how he didn't listen to the Supreme Court.
And the Supreme Court told me I couldn't. I found 2 other ways to do it. And the Supreme
We'll talk about the student loans. That was a really short clip, but yeah. So he's a radical for sure. I'm gonna take a snippet of Joe Biden talking about like, just look at my record, man, and then show some of the things that he said in the past. Again, he's said very racial things, very demeaning things to African Americans, about African Americans, and regarding how we should think, and belittling our intelligence and so on. So he's not a good dude. Not a good dude. But if I was there in the audience and he was saying all this stuff, I'd be so mad. I think I want to put in my will that if I ever die in some kind of national tragedy, that I don't want to be memorialized in some kind of political funeral or something. Like, don't do that. Because I don't know, so often it's so gross. They come to do campaign stuff at events like this. And again, like, it should be about those students, and I'm sure many of them are more liberal than I am, but it shouldn't devolve into your campaign speech. It's about them. It's about their day. So for similar reasons that I don't like his speech, there's trouble I had with Harrison's speech. But Harrison is a football player who spoke at a Catholic school. This is a president of the United States pushing racial division and some conspiracy stuff. And his words carry a lot more weight, obviously. So if you have more issue with what Harrison said at the graduation than you do with Joe Biden, you need to look in the mirror and check yourself. You really seriously need to check yourself, because something is not all the way right there. So anyway, before I let you guys go, and I know I'm over my usual hour, but hey, I had a couple of days off, so here's a little extra. It's not really extra, we're just taking a long time. I want to mention this snippet that's going around with the Pope. And there's so many other things that I wish I could get to today, but I just don't have the time. And I knew that I wouldn't have the time. But this is what's burning a lot of biscuits today.
When you look at the world, what gives you hope?
Todo.
Everything.
Uno ve tragedias,
You see tragedies,
pero ve
but you also see so many beautiful
tantas
things.
cosas lindas. Uno ve madres heroicas,
You see heroic mothers,
hombres heroicos,
heroic men who
hombres
have
que
hopes
tienen
and
ilusión,
dreams,
mujeres que miran
women who
adelante.
look to the future.
Eso a mí me da
That
mucha
gives me a lot
esperanza.
of hope.
La gente quiere vivir,
People want to live.
la gente
People
va
forge
adelante.
ahead. And
La
people are
gente es
fundamentally good.
fundamentalmente buena. Todos somos
We are all
fundamentalmente
fundamentally
buenos.
good.
Por ahí somos un poco
Yes, there are
pícaros,
some rogues and
pecadores,
sinners,
pero
but the
el
heart
corazón
itself
es bueno.
is good.
So I agree with some of that. The idea that when you see things, tragedies and other things happen that are very dark, that you can look to the good and cling to the good. A couple years ago, there was a big shooting in Las Vegas. that happened. Was it around 2016? I was at the Michigan Republican Party at the time, and it was just tragic. And what I clung to were different stories about strangers who were doing their best to save other people's lives. And it was heartbreaking reading a lot about it. And it was inspiring to see the strength and courage of a lot of different people who put themselves in harm's way to help each other through that horrific time. And I did a lot of crying. I didn't know anybody who was I knew somebody who was who was out there, but I don't think they were there at that event. But I didn't know anybody personally who died or who was there. But we're humans, we do empathize with each other. But you can cling to the good, right? So you can do that. But this idea that he's speaking, that people are fundamentally good, that is not in line with anything. Allie Stuckey was going off about, I'm trying to find her tweet really quick about it, but and she's Calvinist, so I'm not surprised in the least that she had a list of scriptures and things. No one is good except God alone, Mark 10:18. Everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin, John 8:34. The heart is deceitful above all things. That was the first scripture that came to my mind. That the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick, Jeremiah 17:9. We all once lived in the passions of our flesh, and we were by nature children of wrath, Ephesians 2:3. I'm not surprised she brought, children of wrath, etc. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We are justified by his grace as a gift, Romans 3:23-24. Apart from Christ, we are dead and sin, enemies of God, Ephesians 2:1. Romans 5:10. We have the heart of stone, Ezekiel 11:19. We are without hope. This is the core of Christianity, because if everyone is basically good, the gospel is not good news. If the gospel is not good news, what's the point? So yeah, we are fundamentally, I would not say good, but do we fundamentally know what is right and what is wrong? Like the Bible also talks about the law being written on our hearts. So we do have a conscience. We do know what is good. Inherently, I would say internally, but people make choices every day to adhere to their flesh and to indulge them. There's a C.S. Lewis quote that I was going to look up. Gosh, let me see if I can find it real quick. But it was something along the lines of, gosh, I don't know if I can find it really quick, but he said something along the lines of that I think I found it. A good read, someone has it. It would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered to us, like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. So I thought that was a great way to look at it, that some people are like, oh, the temptation is so strong, whatever. It's just that we are weak. We are weak and we can't fathom all the goodness of God. So we appeal to these darker inclinations as opposed to striving for something better. So C.S. Lewis has good stuff, man. C.S. Lewis, theologian, but he also wrote the Chronicles of Narnia. That's how most people know C.S. Lewis, because a lot of really good religious books. But yeah, that's what I thought about earlier when I thought about that clip and watched it, and people basically have similar reactions to Ali. Like, no, human beings, we do bad things all the time. And no, we're not. We need the Lord because we are all sinners who have fallen short. He said there are sinners here and there. Like, no, that look in the mirror, sir. People, look in the mirror. You have sinned in your life. You need a savior to pay that price. And if you don't, there's going to be judgment one day. So, not fundamentally good. No one is good but God. Like, this is scripture. It's just a scripture. So I even saw people who were like, I'm Catholic, but I just cannot reconcile what he's saying with the actual teaching of the church. And you can't. But you know, a lot of people want to be nice, and I'm interested what Trent Horn has to say about that snippet. But a lot of people realize that this Pope is not perfect. He also, you know, was asked about the migrants, and he said you shouldn't reject migrants and stuff. And people are like, dude, the Vatican has all these big walls and stuff. Like, you're separate off from the world. How many of you could taken in to live in the Vatican with you? So don't criticize the rest of the world for having borders and standards and wanting people to obey the law. So anyway, that's all I have for you guys on today. Thank you guys for joining me. There's a buzzing on my laptop. It's like my fan. I'm sorry if you could hear it. I didn't want to mention it and everybody be like, they're focused on it, but I don't know if you guys can hear it or not, but I can certainly hear it. So I imagine it probably got picked up on my microphone, and I apologize. But thank you guys for joining me. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website, because it does cost to stream Remo site and all that stuff. So you guys can support. I appreciate it. You guys can check out different merch on the site. Again, I already showed this earlier, but I do have this Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt with a list of some of his racism on the back. So you guys can get that. I also have that on long sleeve as well. Also, I have mugs and other things like that. My weekend on Comic-Con was again pretty good. I talked about it earlier in the show. I encourage you guys to check out some of my books, like The Color of God's Eyes and Song of the Devil's Lips. That's, two of my fiction books. Some of my nonfiction books, I have Slay Your Fear, How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear, which I did write. I was inspired to write that during COVID because people freaking lost their minds. And I have my book, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion, and so on. But I have 18 books available for purchase nowadays. So, and more coming. Very excited. Always writing and trying to get the next big thing out. So thank you guys. And I will see you on tomorrow. I know I want to hit on some more things that Pearl said when she was on video with Tim Cass. She said something about Harrison Butkers that was very interesting. That and another comment that she made about abortion. And those two things paired together, it seems like she doesn't like abortion and she's not for it, but at the same time, her mentality pretty much promotes it. So we'll talk about that and some other things. By the way, the president of Iran died. We didn't get to talk about that, but I guess I wouldn't have much to say other than the fact that it happened, and people assume that, I guess they have conspiracies about the Jews being behind it, but apparently they were in a not great helicopter flying through fog around mountainous terrain. So, you play those odds. Sometimes they don't come out in your favor. But anyway, that's the big news of the foreign policy. But anyway, thank you guys. I don't want to do 12 closings. Goodbye.